60 minutes of MAPA per day, including muscle and bone strengthening activities for at least 3 days per week. So for sedentary behavior, again, they are focusing on recreational screen times, which means that they are not looking at the sedentary screen time for learning purpose. So again, the recommendation is less than 2 hours. And for sleep, there are age-specific recommendations for children and adolescents. So this is what the recommendations for the 24-hour a day. So as I mentioned, I'm quite interested to look at the interrelationship of this daytime physical activities, sedentary behavior, and the nighttime sleep. As I just mentioned, actually, we all have 24-hour days, so we're not going to look at those individual behaviors separately because they may influence each other. So recently, we did a systematic review and meta-analysis trying to explore what are the relationship between daytime movement behaviors, including physical activity and sedentary behavior, and the nocturnal sleep. So in other words, we try to understand what the nighttime sleep may influence the physical activity and sedentary behavior in the following day, and vice versa, how the daytime physical activity and sedentary behavior may influence the nighttime sleep in the same day. So this is what we did. Again, we're targeting school-age children and behaviors, and we include 11 studies. Among them, 8 studies are eligible in the meta-analysis. So I'm just trying to give you some the highlights of the result. So these two figures show the relationship between sleep duration and sedentary time. So basically, this is the meta-analysis result. So if the synthesized result is negative, which means this negative relationship. If the result is positive, which means that it's a positive relationship. So basically speaking, so the sleep duration and sedentary times are negative related. So in the upper figure that illustrates the sleep duration will be negatively associated with the following day's sedentary behaviors. And on the bottom, you will say the sedentary time in the daytime is negatively associated with the subsequent nights of sleep duration. So when we look at the MAPA and the sleep duration, and basically the relationship are positive. It is understandable because the longer the sleep you have in the night, so you may feel more energetic and you participate in more moderate to vigorous physical activity in the following day. So vice versa. So basically, from this systematic review and meta-analysis, we found there are some evidence show that a longer sleep duration was associated with a lower level of sedentary times and a high proportion of daytime physical activities, and vice versa. But the associations was weak in general and based on a very limited number of studies. And another questions we have asked is, so what are the kids compliant with the 24-hour movement guidelines? So this systematic reviews actually targeting the preschool age children. It include 14 cross-sectional studies and 4 longitudinal studies, and include almost 9,000 participants from 11 countries. And you would say fairly, they're half boys and half girls. And on the left, you will see the percentage of children meeting the 3 different recommendations within the 24-hour movement guidelines. And in the middle, you will say only 12.8% of children meeting all of the 3 recommendations within the 24-hour movement guidelines. And the red one highlights that 7% of them meeting none of the recommendations. And you will see the numbers vary a lot when we look at individual recommendations, including physical activity, screen time, and sleep. And here is the figure showing what are the compliance rate by the different age groups. So you will say for the infants, the percentage of children meeting the 24-hour movement guidelines are extremely low compared with toddlers and preschoolers. But don't forget, actually, there's only one study focusing on the infant groups. So definitely there's lack of sufficient evidence in these age groups. So then we found from that systematic review, actually no studies has been conducted in Hong Kong. So this is what we have published recently. Again, on the left, you will see the result for preschoolers, and on the right, you will see the result for adolescents. So this is the findings in Hong Kong. So again, quite alarmingly, very low percentage of preschoolers and adolescents meet the overall 24-hour movement guidelines. So the figures shown here is only 3% versus 1%. So it's even worse with what I have shown you in the previous slide. So that is the global picture. So when we look at the local situation, we found this, it is even worse. And 15% of preschoolers and almost 40% of adolescents in Hong Kong meet none of these recommendations. So this is quite alarming. So we know that the whole day matters. Actually, there are a lot of evidence, and the evidence is still accumulating. So here in this slide, just to give you some examples, meeting the 24-hour movement guidelines were favorably associated with health-related quality of life, social cognitive development, behavior and emotional problems among the preschool age children, global cognition, health-related quality of life, healthy dietary patterns in children, and for children and adolescents, they are related with adiposity, fitness, cardiometabolic, mental, social, and emotional health problems. And meeting more 24-hour movement guidelines were favorably associated with psychosocial health, for example, quality of life among preschoolers. So this means that there seems to be those an effect relationships. So the more guidelines children meet, the more healthy. So we all are affected by the COVID-19 pandemics in the last 3 years. So people are wondering, so what are the pandemic's influence on the movement behaviors among children? So I'm just to show you quickly the findings from one of our recent study. So in this study, we did a survey in 6 cities across China, including Hong Kong. On this slide, I'm going to show you the changes of movement behaviors 1 year after the pandemics among the preschoolers. And this survey, we include more than 1,800 preschoolers and their parents. So here is the result. So on the left, these figures show what's happening in all 6 cities in China. On the right, we specifically look at what's happening in Hong Kong. So the blue ones you show the results means the decrease of individual behaviors, and on the orange one shows the increase of these corresponding behaviors, and the white bar chart just show they are quite similar, not much differences compared with what we did before the pandemic. So in China, as the whole groups, you would say quite oppositely for physical activity, over 60% of the children, they have the decline. But interestingly, for the sleep, quite a large percent of children, they remain the same in terms of the sleep duration. But for Hong Kong, they have the slightly different patterns compared with their peers in mainland China. For example, for physical activity, over 90% of the kids, they have the decline in physical activity. And for sedentary behavior, screen times, again, over half of them have increased these kind of behaviors. But for sleep, most of them could maintain their sleep durations. So if you look around at the literature, the evidence, many health authorities, organizations, and expert panels has provided recommendations for promoting the healthy movement behaviors during the pandemics, because before the pandemic, we already know that physical inactivity is the global epidemic, but nowadays the pandemic actually worsened the situation. So what are the recommendations? it's not surprisingly that if you look at those recommendations, so the first part I'm sure you will find is those recommendations for parents and carers. So because for children's, parents plays a very important role, especially during the pandemic. Most of people work from home, as students will study at home. So there are more time that parents and children actually spend together at home. So this is just a recommendation from an expert panel, and this paper was published in 2020 in Lancet Children and Adolescent Health. So if you're interested, I encourage you to explore it. So for parents and carers, the panel has provided some specific recommendations how they can change their practice and change their support, encouragement for their kids to maintain a relatively healthy movement behaviors during the pandemic. So we did similar things. We tried to look at how the parents actually influence their kids during the pandemic. And this is one of the publications from the preliminary data from the survey. So in these papers, we look at the movement and mental health of parents of preschooler children during the pandemic. So we include about 2,000 caregivers of children aged between 3 and 6. And we look at the prevalence of mental health for those caregivers, and majority of them are parents. And we found that 12.9% of them have symptoms of depression, and 15.15% of them have anxiety, and 8.3% of them have stress. And when we look at the association between their own movement behaviors and the mental health, not surprisingly that we found more physical activity of all intensities, not limited to moderate to vigorous. Intensive physical activity actually is related to a lower level of depression, and the high level of sedentary behaviors is related with a high level of depression and stress. And longer sleep durations is related to a lower symptom, lower level of depression, anxiety, and stress. And again, we found the meeting more recommendations means that they have less symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress. And recently, we are working on a manuscript, and we just submitted for publication, and it is still under review. And we look at what's the relationship between parents' movement behavior and children's movement behaviors. And not surprisingly, we found that actually for the children, they are 2 times more likely to meet the physical activity behaviors if their children meet the guidelines. So before I move forward to talk about the family indicators, I want you to interact with me and share with me your experience. So if you are not familiar with Mentimeter, you can just use your mobile phone to scan the QR code shown in slide, or if you have a laptop on your hand, you can just search www.menti.com. Once you go to that web page, you can enter this code to enter this interaction. So I'll prepare some questions for you so we can have some kind of interactions. So I just give you a few times to scan this code before I share the Mentimeter.
Okay, dear all participants, you can access menti.com and you enter the code, or you can using the QR code.
I will share this again. So if you need this code, here we are. This is the instruction. You can scan this, or you can simply search the website and use this code to enter this room. See if you have any difficulties, questions, just let me know. And also, if you enter this in Mentimeters, you will be able to type in your comments directly in the Mentimeter. Right, I can see we have some audience here already. I will give you more time. Yeah.
Please show the QR code again, Wendy. Can you show the QR code?
Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, here we are. Can you see it? So I'm now sharing the Mentimeter QR code and website. Can you see it? Is it working? Yeah, I can see we have some participants join us.
Okay, all participant, kindly click the www.menti.com, or you just scan using QR code.
Okay. So can you see it, right? Sharing the screen on Mentimeter. So I hope it's working. Okay, so should we start? Should we start?
Yeah.
So actually in every slide, the website and the code will show on the top. So if you miss this instruction sign, you can still join and anytime. All right, so perhaps we can start with the simple questions. So these just for warm up and interaction. So no need to worry about this is whether it's the wrong or correct answer. There's no right or wrong answer. So just based on your own experience, you can simply share with me, okay, your thoughts and feelings. So let's start with the first question. So the first question is, do you think you meet the physical activity recommendations? So for, I'm sure every one of you are adults, if you are undergraduate students. So that is for adults, is 150 minutes per day of moderate rigorous physical activity on average. So yeah, so I'm be interested to know whether you think you meet the recommendations or not. Okay, so if you you can still join the Mentimeter, you see the website on the top and you see the code on the top. So feel free to join this. Okay, so we only have 6 audience. So for the others who haven't joined us, please try to join the Mentimeter. Oh, good. We have more coming in. Okay, so next question is about sedentary behaviors. So again, this is only for sedentary screen time for recreation purpose, leisure purpose. So the meeting recommendation means that less than 2 hours a day. Okay. All right, so you will say we segment our responses according to the previous one. So again, you will say that the distributions and the interrelationship between physical activity and sedentary behavior and guidelines. So yeah, that's quite interesting. We have one audience when participants who are both physically active and spend less time in recreational screen time. So that's very good. And we still have some. Okay, good. So we have more coming in. Okay, so let's move on. Right. So I want to have your wisdom about what perspective do you think your parents will influence your physical activity and sedentary behavior habits. So no matter how physically active or how much time you spend in sedentary behaviors nowadays as a university students, but you can think about your experience when you were a child. So anything you can think about from your parents, they may encourage you to going out, or they may limit your time using a mobile phone, all these kind of things. So whatever things you can think about your parents, you can just type in here. Just some keywords should be fine. So I'll give you some times to respond. Okay, anyone would like to share your ideas? Okay, so try to think about how your parents influence you. Good, we have first respondents. Okay. All right, just to type anything that you think is relevant, or perhaps you can type in other language, but I cannot read it, but the Europeans can read it. All right, okay. Any further comments from the audience? So we have very diverse, actually, although we only have 4 responses, but I think we have diverse situations. Some people say their parents moving every day, for example, going to farming, and the other says they're limiting the active lifestyle. I guess it may be because of they have to work, they don't have time. This echoed from the other 2 participants saying that their parents are really busy, so they have limited time to do exercise. I'm sure this lifestyle may influence their children as well. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so now I ask you to think about, if you want, I ask you to grade your parents' performance on supporting you to be physically active, or supporting you to limit your sedentary screen use. So what you are going to give the grade for your parents. Okay, so just like how your universities evaluate your performance in, say, exercise physiology, physical education, mathematics, and so forth. So if you are asked to give a grade, so what grade you would like to give for your parents? From A, B, C, D to F. So again, we understand the A means this very good, and for F, that it means not that reasonable, right? Okay. All right. So any further response? Oh, very good. We have many of the audience say they would like to give A. Then they may think their parents has done very good job in promoting or supporting you to be physically active. Yeah, it's very encouraging, but we still have 1 D grade, but we don't have F grade. Okay. So how would you like to grade your parents' performance for your country? So last question is asking about your own performance, your own parents' performance. Now let's think about the performance in Indonesia, so in your home country. So what you would like to give the grade for the parents' performance to encouraging their kids to be physically active? It seems that we have the relatively lower grade compared with the previous question. Okay, we have both C and D, but we don't have A and B anymore. All right, got it. Thank you. And then the last question I would like to reflect. So how do you think your country performed compared with the global average? No, I haven't shown you the global average, but based on your experience, opinions, so what do you think? Do you think your country performed better than the global average or worse than global average in the parents' performance? How do you feel? Well, most of people think they're quite similar, which is C or D, but some of you think they are worse than the global average. Okay, most of you think they're quite similar. Okay, all right. So I think that's all for the Mentimeter. I'm not sure if you enjoy it or not, but I have found this it still is useful in my teaching. So thank you very much for giving me feedback. Let's now go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, can you see my slide now? Hope it's working. Okay, so let's now move on. So I hope so far I have convinced you the importance of family from your own perspective and also from the work we found in the literature. There are lots of evidence, information talking about the parents' influence on their kids' active lifestyle. So one of the documents I would like to share is actually from the participation in Canada. So recently, they published consensus statement on the role of the family in physical activity, sedentary behavior, and sleep of children and youth. I won't read it out, but if you're interested, you can simply search, and I'm going to show the publications as well in the coming slide. So I think this document provides very nice synthesis of evidence showing how parents influence their kids and what are the research gap in the literature. So perhaps if you're interested in these areas, that will give you some ideas or what's the way we are moving forward. Okay, so this is a conceptual model illustrating the relationship, linking the family and the movement behavior of children and youth. So this is based on social ecological model. So basically, in the middle, you see the children's 3 different kind of movement behaviors. And this inner circle show the influence of families. So they highlight the positions, the type of influences, including the demographics, home environment, parenting style, parents' preference, and characteristics as the immediate to the children and youth movement behaviors. And then they highlight the core family system constructs, including family functioning, family structure, family members and stakeholders as the likely sources of those type of influence. So don't forget, because this is social ecological model, so the family is one of the important influencing factors of children, but don't forget we still have the culture, the community, policy, and social influences at the outer layer of this model as well. So now let's take a closer look at this indicator. So I'm sure you're quite familiar with this from the lectures in the last few weeks. So family and fears is one of the 10 common indicators in Global Matrix 4 report card. So let's take a closer look at this. So this is from the Global Matrix report card. They provide the definitions for family and peers. It refers to any member within the family who can control or influence the physical activity opportunities and participation of children's youth in this environment. And if you look at the benchmarks, okay, the benchmarks actually are quite diverse. It could include percentages of family members parents, guardians who facilitate physical activity and sport participation for their children, as well as the behaviors of parents per se. So, for example, as the adults, whether or not parents meet the global recommendations of physical activity for health. So, which is the question actually I just asked you. Percentage of family members who are physically active together with their kids, and percentage of children and adolescents who has friends and peers who encourage them, support them to be physically active, as well as percentage of children and adolescents who encourage and support their friends and peers to be physically active. So it does not necessarily mean that for each individual country, they have to evaluate their performance based on all of these indicators. They perhaps found evidence, look at one or two, or even two or three of them. So as long as they can find compelling evidence targeting some of the indicators, and they can have evidence to grade these indicators. So again, this is what you have been quite familiar with. This is a rubrics, just a reminder how we grade this from F to A+. If there's insufficient evidence, we will simply give the incomplete INC. So in the coming slide, I'm going to show you how different countries and regions perform in terms of the family and peers. So I will start with Hong Kong because I'm working here, and I will give you some ideas of how the Asian countries and regions perform, and then we zoom into the global situations. So in Hong Kong, unfortunately, we were not able to assign a letter grade compared with what we did in 2018 and 2016. So we simply give the INC. It's simply because we do not find sufficient evidence, especially recent evidence. And in Asian regions, actually, there are two synthesis papers we published. One is looking at the report card grades from all the 18 Asian countries in Global Matrix 2.0 to Global Matrix 4.
Yang tadi pakai lagi.
And the other manuscripts
Mau kemana?
at those countries participating in Global Matrix 4. So if you're interested, look at the trends over the past 2 decades. You can look at the paper led by Yang, and if you simply want to know the result for the recent Global Matrix, you can look at the paper actually written by me and the other colleagues, including Mark Tremblay, who is the leader of the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance. So just to give you some highlights. This is the result from Singapore, and the grade, this indicator is C minor, so which means that the 42% of children and adolescents meet the benchmarks I showed in previous slides. And the benchmark actually used is the family members who facilitate physical activity and sport opportunities for their children. And they are graded based on the cohort studies. And quite similar, this is the result from Japan. They also got C minor, and the evidence is quite similar. Based on the parents who provide support for their children. And for Thailand, I think they give a very high grade, which is A minor, and you can see why they give this grade, and because of the recent survey result. Because of COVID, they engaged more with their families, and that may be the reason why they got the higher grade compared with the previous report card. And for China, we found the little bit different is because China has data for a friends report, because this indicator is include not only parents but also friends. But for many of the preceding countries, actually they don't have evidence for peers. They only assign a grade based on the parents. So how did Asian countries and regions perform? So this is again from the paper I just mentioned. So on average, actually, you would say we got C minor. So this is all 15 Asian joint districts. And for Indonesia, I'm sure you're aware of this. You got not reasonably great, which is F, but for Hong Kong, as I said, we have incomplete grade. And you will say some of the Asian countries, Nepal, for example, they got a very high grade, whereas we have several regions have very low grade. And this is the result from the 57 countries from Global Matrix 4. And again, you can see the name from of the leader of the Indonesia report card. This is the slide, very busy table. I know you won't be able to see, but just to give you some highlight, the blue grade shows the good grades, and the grades highlight in pink shows the not reasonably grade. So again, this is where Indonesia is and where Hong Kong is. We are at the lower end of the global comparison. And this table shows the average, okay, the average of all countries, which is C minor, and the aggregated indicator grade by the levels of human development index classifications, including very high, high, and medium, low. You would say this fairly consistent grade for family and peers, or around C or C minors across all the countries. And people may wonder how the pandemic may affect these indicators. Here we are. But I want to draw your attention that actually only 6 countries can have post-COVID data to assign a letter grade for this indicator. So compared with majority of countries only rely on pre-pandemic data, we should be very careful when making comparisons. But it's quite obvious if those countries have post-pandemic evidence, actually the grade is higher compared with the other countries. Again, show you the paper led by Professor John Riley from University of Strathclyde. They tried to look at the secular trends from Global Matrix 1 to Global Matrix 4, see whether there are changes in each indicators. So here I highlight the result for family and then peers. Basically, you would say we compare Global Matrix 2 with 1, 3 with 1, 4 with 1, and also considering the other factors. But the conclusion is that there's no obvious change. So we can interpret these findings in 2 different ways. So perhaps people are positive because the grade is relatively stable, which means that there's no decline. But from the other perspective, we can argue that because the grade is C minor or C, so there's not much improvement over the last 2 decades. So just to give a quick summary, on average, slightly less than half of children and adolescents meet the benchmark, both globally and in Asia, which is C minor. Over 20% of jurisdictions do not have sufficient data to grade this indicator, so that's why they have I and C. Globally, no obvious changes were found in this indicator over the last 2 decades. So then we have to ask how to improve our grades. So I can just give you some example. This is not from me. It is actually from the country leaders in different countries. They share their wisdom, they share their views, reflections on how or what we can do to improve the grades in report card. So again, I start with Hong Kong. So you may remember that we have RNC, so that means we need surveillance. We need to improve the surveillance system for family and peer support. And we need to encourage the parents' education, especially the importance of parental role modeling. And we need to increase the availabilities of practical home-based programs, especially for the low socioeconomic status families. And again, we need to promote peer group exercise in order to improve our grading. So here is what your country leaders said. Perhaps the Professor Mahendra can give more sharing after this talk, because as a recall, okay, as a reminder, Indonesia got the F grade, and the country leaders have shared their wisdoms to encourage the national campaigns, for example, from the government, to highlight the importance of making family happier and making the quality lives better. And they should emphasize on the important roles of families on shaping the positive habits and so forth. So for Chinese Taipei, again, they got the lower grade, which is D minor. So this is what their country leader said, to change the parents' perception in the benefits of physical activity, in the health outcomes for children, to reduce parents' working hour. Again, I think there's a long way to go in order to change the policies so that the parents can have more time to support their kids' physical activity. And parents' schools should encourage participation in school club and teams and so forth. And here is the Malaysia's. Again, they have the incomplete grade, but they try to promote some policies. For example, the sports tax relief exemption. I think that's the case for many of countries, especially for those low socioeconomic status families, to help them to purchase the sport equipment, and to provide better support to programs and opportunities geared towards the entire family being physically active. So from their perspective, they think it's quite important to develop some programs to get the entire family to be physically active together in order to maximize the impact. Okay, so that's, I think that's all my sharing. So a lot of information on a different website. I want to highlight that actually we have the special issue on Active Healthy Kids report card in Asian, which now including 16 countries. I'm sure Indonesia will soon get their one published in this special issue as well. So I encourage you to go to that webpage or scan this QR code to get more information. And we have the designated website for Active Healthy Kids Hong Kong. So again, a lot of information there. For the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance, they have the website and different medias to share their information.
Okay.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for your time and attention. I'm very happy to answer any questions if you have. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wendy, for such fruitful presentation. And now we'll have question and answer session. I will invite a question from the participant. The participant, you may write the question in the chat room or raise your hand to state directly to our speaker today. All right. Does anyone have a question? While we wait, participant asks question, maybe from Pak Agus or other lecturer or participant today, you have any comment or maybe, yeah, including state the question. Pak Agus, maybe you have any question or comment?
Okay, Bu Mesa, thank you very much for assigning me to be the first person to extend questions to Dr. Wendy. Okay, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you for very inspiring presentation, Wendy. And also, I'd like to extend our great gratitude for your willingness to support our program, to join in this session. Of course, it's a little bit hard for you and including all the participants to attend this session because it's the weekend, weekend, and especially for most of us, it's family time actually. Okay. Considering your grade, I mean the Hong Kong report card grade to the family indicators, which is incomplete or inconclusive, I'd like to a little bit elaborate for the reason that you didn't find sufficient data or the best available data, including, I mean, in terms of this family and peers indicator. Do you think is that because not many researcher or academician ever, let's say, put the concern on this family, so you don't have the report, a national report on this, or what do you think? I
Yeah.
hope you get my questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. That's actually a very good question because I'm sure you have a lot of experience when you develop your own report card. And for me, indeed, we are a little bit disappointed that we cannot grade a family and peers this time, because we were able to do this in the last two Hong Kong report card. Yes, that's true. We did not find recent evidence on family indicator, but I want to highlight the point that because we have benchmark, we do have some evidence, but the talking about family influence, but those evidence are not consistent with the benchmark. So that means we cannot, based on this benchmark, to find what is percentage of children meet this criteria, that criteria, so on and so forth. So that's why we're not able to use that evidence. Another common problem is that some of the studies may be very small scale and only focus on a small group of children and their parents, so they are not representative to the whole populations in Hong Kong. So that's why we're quite conscious. We don't feel confident to rely on those very limited evidence to assign a grade. So that's why we decided to give an INC this time. But definitely, I think in Hong Kong, we all agree that family play a very important role. And but definitely we need more evidence. We need more evidence from representative sample of children. And again, we need those evidence specific to answer the questions we ask in the benchmarks. So that's why we'll probably be able to assign a letter grade in the next report card. So perhaps what's your experience when you develop your own country report card?
Well, actually, we really relied on one report done by one of the ministry. That's the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection. They reported in the edition of 2019 that but actually, the report only derived from. Sorry, it's there is a sound outside. Okay, so it is not the children who fill in the questionnaire, but the family or maybe the parent who acknowledge that only about 7% of the parent ever bring their children to play together outside, and then they said that it's only kind of very light intensity activities. But why did we decide that this one is the best available data? Because it's involved around 75,000 families. So, okay, I think it was the best data that we ever had during the process of the evaluation. So that's why we decided to give F, because it's still too far from, let's say, above 20% of the family ever play with their children. That's what our experience.
Yeah, that's actually very impressive sample size.
Yeah. And then let me go back to your previous presentation regarding the physical activity. I have kind of curiosity regarding the low level of the children in terms of physical activity level. Do you think if the children let's say suffer from really low level of physical activity and connected to the risk or to the consequence of being in low level of physical activity, have you ever found, let's say, the result finding that this lack of activities can be compensable? I mean, in the other period of time, we could, let's say, acknowledge that it's kind of really great and grave consequence for our children that during the pandemic of COVID-19, they have very low level of physical activity, and I could assume, or we could assume, that our children will have severe consequences from that inactivities. But there are so many also parents that say that, well, we can accept that situation because later on we can compensate with, let's say, asking the children, our children, to be more active when the pandemic gone, let's say. This opinions, well, for me it's a kind of a bit dangerous, because to me that the parents didn't realize about the negative consequence of this situation. But do you think their opinion also have the right base of reason or not?
Yeah, that's very interesting question. I think it's understandable because during the pandemic, our focus has been shifted to the COVID, right? So this is the top priority for not only for the government and also for the individual persons. So that's true because we have to work from home, students study from home. We have to go to keep social distancing. Sports facilities has been closed for a while, so we do not have much opportunities to be physically active outdoors. But I think in the past, we always encourage people to be physically active, and the message we deliver is it's never too late to be physically active.
Yeah.
So if during the pandemic, if there's no other choice, maybe that's the reality, that children's physical activity has been reduced to a certain extent. But I don't think that should be the reason that we simply accept this situation, because still during the pandemic, I think that's happening all over the world. Many including government, NGO, health organizations have worked very hard to deliver or develop some home-based exercise, or it's not exercise, and maybe take advantage of your current home environment to be physically active. That does not necessarily mean that case has to get changed to allow much more space to be physically active, so they can enjoy the lifestyle routine to be more active instead of being sedentary. So I think it's quite important that parents should be convinced that their kids should be always active, even during these difficult situations, because there's almost 3 years. So 3 years for young kids is a long period of time. So they lost the opportunities to get their muscles trained, to improve their physical fitness. I think that the time is very, very important for them. Yeah. So I don't think if you allow your kids to be totally sedentary for 3 years, then you got that hopefully compensated after pandemic, even if this case can be physically active. So I think, this is our work. We have to do more advocacy. We have to be more creative to promote our kids to be physically active. So that's very good question. Thank you, Angus.
Yeah, thank you. That's also a good point from your answer. Thank you. Umesa, you can continue
Okay.
to other participant.
Right. Thank you, Pak Agus. And I'll invite from other participants to set the question. And I have a question actually for Dr. Wendy. May I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You have shown clearly how the level of physical activity, screen time, and has significant changes in COVID-19. And I realize as parents also for 2 kids, and it's very difficult to to influence the children to doing the physical activity in sufficient physical activity in COVID-19. But in now the post-pandemic situation, and also it can changes, but except for the screen time is I think there's no significant differences that than pandemic situation. And I want and you also said that the socio-economic status also can influence how the parents can influence children's physical activities, and how to get the data that can describe physical activity of parent with children, and also children with their peers, and is IPAC enough to describe parent physical activity? Then for children physical activity, is it enough to use IPAC for children questionnaire, or use a pedometer, even an accelerometer, which is the best for get the data? And then is the best sampling based on population data or through school based survey? Which one do you think is better?
Right. Yeah, thank you for the question. I think you are talking about the method, right? So how we can get the data for parents and children. Yeah. I think for us, for physical activity, actually the recommendations nowadays is try to make the best use of device measurement. I understand for some countries they may be very difficult to get representative sample, which means that we have a large sample size while we still have device-based measurement. For us, we managed to have such kind of device-based measurement for hundreds of cases, but it's still challenging. But I think as long as you have well-validated questionnaire catering for your populations, I think that's acceptable. For sampling, unfortunately for us, we still rely on school system, because that is the most efficient way how we can approach school children and their families. So our normal practice is to approach the schools and recruit from the schools, and once the parents get concerned, so we can approach those parents through school. So that's still the ways actually we are doing. I know for some other countries, they may have different system. They may approach the families directly through healthcare system, for example. But for us, still we rely heavily on school system to approach them. Yeah, I hope I answer your questions.
Yes. Of course, before the device measurement is will be a little bit pricey for a country, and Okay, thank you for the explanation, the answer explanation, Dr. Wendy. And does anyone have a question from the participant? Okay, if there's no question anymore from the participant,
Bu
Uh-huh.
Nesya,
yeah,
please not
Yeah.
to to quickly close, because I would like to
okay,
learn from Hong Kong experience in order to release their report card nationally. What I'd like to you share us about the report card release is, in what way did you release your report card? What did you do? Are you, let's say, inviting so many people to one event and then giving all the book or the report card book to the participant, or only through, let's say, publish related news in the media, or
Mm.
what else?
Okay, so our practice is we will have a formal press release. So the university will invite the local media. So the main medias will be invited.
Mhm.
So we have about 1.5 hours of press release.
Mhm.
Because this year we are quite lucky. So Professor Mark Trampling joined us because he was invited by the Chinese University
Oh,
of Hong Kong to be the distinguished scholar. So so that's why we can take advantage of his visit. So he was there. It's very good as the president. And the second thing is that we got support from Sun Life. Maybe you also get support from Sun Life, right?
yeah. We
Yeah,
get
so we
support
got
from-
Sun Life support. So we have representative from Sun Life Hong Kong to join the press release as well.
Is she
So
a PB?
yes, Baby Pound.
Yeah.
So the team members will all together on the stage, and Stephen made a very short presentation followed by Mark. So after their introductions, we invite the media to ask questions. There's some Q&A session, and the good thing is we invite local school representative, including their principal, vice principal, one student representative together with their mom. So it's very interesting because media want to have the first-hand experience, and they want to hear what they say instead of what we say from the researchers. So they have very interesting conversations during the Q&A sessions. We prepare the press release document to the medias together with our print copies. So that's what we usually organize our press release, and we found this is successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. It was really great to
Thank
hear
you.
that.
Guys,
And you were fortunate because Mark is directly there in person to present.
Yes, in fact, he joined us last time in 2018 report card release. And 4 years later, and he could visit us again, and we are very glad to have him again in the press release.
Yeah. I think Hong Kong is really fortunate because it has you and Stephen Wong to be there, and also Robin as the person who.
In fact, we were very grateful to have our core members, because most of our core members has been working over the last decades for the 3 report card together. So we know each other very well, and we know how we are going to work together to make the discussion more efficient or more focused. And we have, I haven't mentioned is we have very supportive stakeholder group as well, because after we sign the initial grade, we have the online consultation with our stakeholder members. So they gave us feedback and they provide their views, and they share the additional resources if they have. So I think this project is very, very helpful as well. Yeah, we are so lucky to have so many people supportive.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that.
Because
Okay.
it's not easy job actually. Even for us, it's the third time for us to join this project, but there's still a lot of challenges in the whole process. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Again, congratulations and thank you for the experience sharing. Yeah, wish us luck also, because we are going to
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm
try
sure
to
you
release.
eventually get down.
Yeah. And I'd like also to copy some of your steps, some of your methods to release nationally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again. Bu Mesa, I think back to you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Agus, for the question to Dr. Wendy. We hope that our national release report card will be successfully.
Amin.
Yeah.
I sure
Okay.
will.
Okay, Dr. Wendy. Before we end our session today, do you have any recommendation or closing statement for us today?
Yeah, I think we have a very fruitful conversation with Gus and also the chair, you. So I'm very glad to have opportunities to join your summer program. And I know it's weekend. It's difficult for every one of us to come together after a whole week hard work and study. In our university, actually, it's examination period, so students are very busy with different kind of examinations. So I can't imagine so many students are here. So thank you very much for joining this session today. So still, I will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, we still have the last session with you tomorrow, Dr. Wendy. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Wendy, for the great presentation, and also many things we can learn from your presentation today. And allow me to end our session today. And don't forget to all the participants, we still have last session in for tomorrow in our summer program. Don't forget to coming again in at 11 a.m. in Indonesia time. And thank you so much. Now we can take picture together before we close the session. Please open your camera and give a big smile. Okay, Ali, I know you have very handsome smile, and all the participants. Okay, I count down from 3, 2, 1. Okay. Thank you so much for all the participants to join today in our
You taken the
weekend.
second page, Bu Mesa?
No, we have no second page, Pak.
Oh.
Is that, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for all the participants. We are very happy having you to this session today. Happy weekend for all. See you tomorrow. Please come back again and to our last session. Thank you so much for all. Have a great day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Wendy. Please coming up together again.